welcome to this latest Scaling Up podcast, really all focused around how to go about attracting, recruiting, and retaining top talent. My name is Neil Lewis. I'm a Scaling Up coach and help a lot of organizations really figure out a way of finding this top talent. Probably one of the number one challenges right now is how do you go about attracting, recruiting, and really retaining AA players. So over the course of the next half an hour or so, I'm just going to take you through a raft of ideas, a raft of tools, a raft of tips to give you a competitive advantage in this critical area. So when we're talking about scaling up, we are looking at 4 decisions that we need to master around people, strategy, execution, and cash. And today, it's all about people. I think right now, where we are with the economy, with the global challenges of attracting great people, this is probably couldn't come at a more timely moment. One of the fundamental questions that we ask when it comes to scaling up people is, knowing what you know now, how many of your team would you enthusiastically rehire? And that's the whole point of this session today. This podcast is all around figuring out the right people, discovering and understanding what makes an A player. How do you attract them to your team? How do you create an employment brand? How do you have a robust process on which to systematically and constantly hire great people and then onboard them in the right way and make sure that you retain them? I think the adage is, if you want to 10x your organization, well, you have to then go about 10xing your team, 10xing your people. And probably so important right now to take stock. If you're looking to grow, looking to scale up your organization, and look around at your talent, and are they the sort of folk that really you can 10x, and are you 10xing yourself right now? I think Jim Collins puts it really well in his great seminal book, Good to Great, when he talks about getting the right people on the bus. And then once you've got them on the bus, making sure that they're sitting in the right seats, playing to their strengths. And when you get to the next bus stop, if you haven't got the right people on the bus, it's finding a way of gracefully letting them off and finding a career or an opportunity elsewhere. So the old adage that people are your most important asset turns out to be wrong. People are not your most important asset. The right people are. And this is really, really important. You're getting the right people and understanding who are the right people, are they going to be driving your growth in the future. And fundamentally, I firmly believe it's the wrong people who are your worst asset. But we see it time and time again that it's really, really difficult to find a way of getting those wrong people out of your organization. And the other thing to point out is that actually when you start out a company, you might have good people on board, but as you grow out, you scale up, those people that you started with might not necessarily be those same people who are going to take you to the next level of your journey. So again, that's a real hardship, is to figure out and understand who are the right people to help you on your scale up journey. I think Richard Branson puts it really well in terms of, you really take care of your employees, and in turn, they will take care of your business. It's as simple as that. And it's a really good fundamental. I love this quote by Tony Hsieh. Most companies are very quick to hire. They're slow to fire. And when it really should be the other way around in terms of quick to hire and slow to fire. So make sure that you are having a really robust process to take the right amount of time to get the right people on board. And then if they are not right, is being able to get them off the bus as fast as you can. The other adage I really want to really hone in is this notion of hire for attitude all day long, and then you can always train for aptitude or train for skills. I think what you see so often that people are looking at resumes, looking at CVs, have they got all the right skill sets, and lose sight that sometimes they're getting people onto the bus or into the organization that don't have the right attitude, that don't have the ability to really want to grow and to learn and all those things. Jim Collins, again, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, wrote good to great and great by choice, just comes back to the one question that we need to be asking ourselves right now is the who question. And that's what this podcast is all about. Most companies successfully hire top performers or A players only 25% of the time. So that means that 75% of the time, we're not hiring great people or top performers. And that comes with it a significant cost. If you just look at the cost of bad hiring, well, if even at a sort of a junior level, that can sometimes be up to 4 times their annual salary. The sales reps maybe 6 times annual salary, mid-level managers 8 times. And if it's a big board hire or somebody that's a senior team, the cost of a bad hire is significant. It can be up to 15 times their annual salary. And that's all around potentially impact they have on the company culture, the company's reputation, the impact it has on other teams, that lost opportunity and maybe a business that you could have had with the right person, and the fact that you've got to go over and do the whole hiring process again. So it's significant of getting this wrong. And of course, most of us have never been to any kind of school that teaches us how to hire great talent. We just haven't. There's a few sort of tools and around that to help us, but there's no real university or school that's all dedicated to hiring top talent. Why do we struggle? Why do we really suck at hiring? And I think there's a number of reasons that go to us. One is, as just mentioned, we've never really been trained about how to do it. So most of our experience is the experience of hard knocks and we made another mistake, we had another poor hire. I think second is there's no system or process to hire. So we kind of then literally dive straight into it. We've got an urgent opening that's filling and we get straight into it. And we don't have the right amount of due diligence to go through and hire in the right way. And because we're trying to do it at pace, well, we leave a lot of challenges, a lot of the critical steps on the table. So this podcast is really going to dive deeper into giving you some frameworks now to improve this hiring process and fundamentally how to go about hiring and retaining A players. So the first thing I want to really look at is what constitutes an A player. Who is an A player? And there's a number of things that would come to mind. First up is somebody who is probably in the top 10% of their profession on an industry-wide basis for their salary. They're a person on your team who you'd absolutely enthusiastically rehire. They drive probably all the profitability and growth in your company. They operate at high integrity and they really consistently deliver on their commitments. Everybody covets them around the company, and they really are a good fit for your culture, your core values and their behaviors. And I think there's some of the other things, when we look out for some other competencies I would highlight. First and fundamentally, they're smart. They're business savvy. They've got a real internal drive to succeed. They're passionate. They're passionate about success, and they're really open-minded to doing new ways of business. I think they're consistently high performers, very hard workers. They actually want to surround themselves with higher performers. And that's what we often see is A players who leave an organization is that they're having to deal with bozos who are surrounded by other C players. And that's the massive drain on them. For me, one of the major competencies right now, when we're looking at hiring talent, is are they resourceful? Are they resourceful? Are they sort of people that are able to overcome challenges and obstacles and figure it out for themselves? And in turn, then becoming effective leaders around that. I wanted to talk about them having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And again, this notion of always wanting to find new ways of doing things, open to new learnings, happy to fail and then learn from that as well. And they really do hold themselves to account. I think that's really important. So those are some of the A player competencies when we reflect on that. Conversely, what does a C player look like? On the other end of the scale, I think most organizations, probably have few A players and may have some B players, but they may have a few C players as well. And these people really, they only work for money. They do not work for a greater purpose or mission. They chronically miss out on goals and deadlines and are constantly making excuses for this. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, they are A player repellent, as A players do not want to be on a team with C players. So you can't wait to get them off your team. You know, they're the gossips. They will not be held accountable. If you are to start bringing in some KPIs, some results, some scoreboards, and review process, they'll really push back on that. The last thing they want to do is have any sort of grading or way of having their poor performance assessed. So that's, I think, really important to understand that. We've also used this flip chart. For me, the difference, and we call this above and below the line, where A players take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for their actions, and they operate above the line. They want to be on winning cultures, winning teams. Conversely, people who are C players, they operate below the line, and they're always making excuses, always blaming others for falling short, and they're probably in denial as well. So these operate in a victim culture, a victim mentality in the way they operate. So it's a really neat way of just bringing about a positive, a winning culture is about bringing on people who operate above the line. Just to set the scene, we want to make sure that we are bringing in a robust process to attract, to source, select, and verify these A players, and make sure that we've got a robust hiring process in place. So if we are going to build an A team, it doesn't come by default. It doesn't come by just in terms of trial and error. It comes by been having a consistent process in place. And we absolutely advocate a process we call top grading, a top grading approach for really recruiting, promoting, and retaining top talent. The book was written by a gentleman by the name of Brad Smart. Put the details of this in the file notes around that. But Brad's lifetime work has all been about how to teach organizations around hiring and retaining A players. And this whole top grading approach is used around the world by large organizations, used by private equity companies, it's used by organizations to provide a really robust way to ensure that more often than not, we're making successful hires. His son, Jeff, has also probably written a book I'd even advocate even more called Who. And this book around who is how to go about solving your number one problem. Who are you going to get to do the work around your organization? So it's this who method of hiring that I'm going to really reflect on for the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, because it's so important that we've got this off pat, we can understand some of the structure that we're going to give you, and then we'll make sure in the file notes through this podcast that you've got some of the tools I'm talking about today and a way to go and reference some of the books that I'm also going to be discussing. So what they all talk about, and again, why we have these hiring challenges, is a number of key areas that whenever you get a CV put in front of you, you almost have to look at it through the lens that this is absolute fiction. What's in front of you may have been made up. It could be just copied from somewhere else. It could be just a whole area of rampant dishonesty. And it's probably more the weaker candidates who are likely to fudge their CVs and be coached in a way that they can just about scrape through interviews. So that is one thing that we kind of got to figure out. How do we make sure we've got a really good way of getting past that area? Number two, because we're looking to hire quickly, we probably haven't spent the right amount of time getting the sufficient information. We have superficial interviews, which means in turn that we haven't got all the data, we haven't got all the insight, haven't really probed into all the facts to ensure that whoever's in front of us is going to be a great resource for the company. And where we also go wrong nowadays is that we don't go about verifying what has been put in front of us through the CVs. Most reference checks nowadays are practically useless. But what Jeff gives us in the top grading approach is some really good hacks about, as you're going through the process, How do you ensure that you are giving the candidate every reason to believe that you are going to be getting in contact with some of the line managers they would have worked with in the past? And as soon as you've given them that heads up, you're going to have them straight away an alert that they have to make sure that they are giving you a semblance of the truth or a semblance of reality. So that's really, really important. So Jeff talks about in the A method for hiring 4 S's that we need to fundamentally understand. And then if we're doing a lot of hiring, master. Number 1 is the notion of what he calls a scorecard. And the scorecard is a really important document that really is there to identify the mission for the role, what are the outcomes are really clear about what the role needs to deliver on, and then what the attributes of the perfect candidate. So that's the scorecard. Number 2, S for source. How do we go about finding great candidates? And in the era of time of the Great Resignation right now, and where the labor market is really difficult to find great people, how do you stand out? How are you going to attract great candidates? And what is clear is that most people who are great candidates are probably already in a meaningful job. It's more likely it's the C players who are probably spending all day in front of the TV watching Jeremy Kyle repeat. So that's a really important. Yes. Number 3, select. How do we go about choosing the right people and having a robust process of interviews that are designed to make sure that more often than not we choose exactly the right person? And if they're good and they're gainfully employed somewhere else, we need to sell the sizzle. So the 4th S is sell. How do we get a great candidate to say yes to come and join our organization? So let's go to those in a bit more detail. So step 1, as I mentioned, is the scorecard. And this is where we get clear on the mission for the role, what the role needs to achieve. What are the outcomes, both in terms of numerical outcomes, KPIs, and key deliverables that the role has got to achieve? This is very different to a resume or a CV that what somebody's done in the past. This is all about, for this specific role, these are the outcomes that we need to be achieved around it. And we also want to make sure that any candidates who are going to come and join us are a really good cultural fit. So when we think about what the behavioral attributes that make them likely to fit into our culture, we need to determine what they are and get them worked in as well. So an example of a scorecard could be if you've got the role of a general manager. So let's say we've got a hydroelectric turbine company. The mission for the general manager is to grow this company's largest division from 200 million of revenues to 400 million of revenues over the next 5 years. The general manager will have full P&L accountability and responsibility for over 300 staff. That's the mission. Then we need to make sure that the clear outcomes, so the person knows that this is something that's within their capabilities, that when we are looking to score them, have they got the ability to succeed and maybe excel in this particular role. So you maybe get some of the outcomes. And outcome number 1 could be, as I say, very specific around numerical outcomes to grow the revenues from 200 million to 400 million over the next 5 years, achieving 15% annual growth. Very specific. Number 2, it could be the second outcome, build a team composed of 90% or more A players within the next 3 years. And if it's currently around about 20%, then there's a clear KPI from where we are now to where they need to get to, and to make sure that while they're doing that, there's consistent use of the top grading process to do that. And it could be then the third outcome could be to expand capacity to accommodate 15% annual growth. That could be making sure that there's clear areas within the factory that they're able to grow the factory as well. So once you've got your outcomes down, when you are assessing each of the candidates, you can quiz them on how likely they are to be able to achieve those outcomes. Can they demonstrate in the past when they've been able to do that? Have they got a strong track record of working in a growth company? Have they got a strong track record of growing talent around that? Do they know how to bring about operational efficiencies. So that's the sort of scorecard, and it allows you to be really, really focused on the suitability for the candidate against the role that you're looking to recruit for. The other benefit of having a scorecard is once you've brought somebody on board, you can use the scorecard to use the quarterly views or the annual reviews to make sure that they're on target against the desired outcomes. So that's the scorecard. The second point I mentioned was making sure that we've got a process to source great A players. And in a time when these are challenging areas, there's a number of things we look at here to do that. Firstly, I think the easiest way is looking around at your existing network and speak to your A players, because the likelihood is that your A players on the team are likely to hang out with other A players, and give them, a finder's fee or a referral fee. If they bring in and reference somebody that is an A player to your organization, incentivize them to do that. Do not ever look to your C players to go and refer that, because his likelihood is that they will only bring in D players, Z players, or whatever it is. So looking at that. Number two, ensure your company LinkedIn profile is 100% up to date, and you're advertising or your open positions on that. Maybe use other sort of social recruiting, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, maybe for slightly lower level, entry level jobs in the company. Take a good look at your website. And I really, really believe now that marketing department has two roles. One is to bring in great new clients into your organization, but doing marketing right, we should also be able to attract great people as well. So make sure that the career section of your website is exciting, it's attractive. If you've demonstrated that you are a top company to work for, or you've got some great areas of highlighting why they should come and join your company, make sure that's visible onto your career section around that. And when it's coming up for larger roles, I think, there's still opportunities then to advertise on specific job boards, Indeed, ZipRecruiter. If you need to, specifically for very senior hires, go to someone who is a specialist recruiting company or headhunter to ensure that they have got a strong brief to find you the talent that you're looking for. I've worked with a number of organizations who have expanded their teams rapidly over the last 5 to 10 years, and they really indulge themselves in the fact of making sure that their career section is up to date, is exciting. They're talking about why you should come and join them, and on here they might highlight the fact that there are Sunday Times best 100 small companies to work for, that they're recognized as from the Living Wage Foundation. You might be B Corp registered around that. You might be committed to diversity and all those things. So just make sure that if you are in this particular company I'm looking at now, is a security company, what they're advocating is why they are the best security company in the UK to work for. But when you're putting an advert out onto LinkedIn, just make it exciting as well. That headline that you're going to talk about is that you're looking to hire a rock star to take on the marketing reins for the next level or whatever. Is come and join our incredible company. Just make that original advert really exciting. It's going to attract people to want to reach out to you in the first place. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, have in place a referral fee or bounty for your team who bring in A players, or indeed people who are you may be suppliers. I think it's always good to ask if you're looking for a great salesperson or a great sales lead, just ask in the industry, who do you know right now who you would advocate is the best sales lead in our industry? Who is the best salesperson across the mortgage industry? Who do you hear about as the best salesperson in a plastic manufacturing company? Who literally people will know, the suppliers will know, these people will have a feel for who they believe are the best people. Great question to ask around that. And then I think it's always a good idea, just in terms of getting a written list down of 10 people that you would love to hire at any given time. You might have done some analysis around LinkedIn or wherever it is and thinking, wow, if I could bring these people into the organization, they'd be great. just have that list in place. A couple of hacks around there. Then we need to make sure that we are really getting into the select process, the recruitment process, the interview process, to help us choose the right candidate. But also, when somebody's in front of us, for them to believe that we are really professional in the way we come across, the whole process of recruitment. If we come across as really professional, it's going to give somebody who's an A player the idea that we're a great organization, because we have a robust process to do this. So I think it's A players really relish professional, well brought together recruitment process. And we've got to find areas in terms of ensuring that they are the talent that we need. And one of the key areas that Jeff Smart points out where we do go wrong is when we meet for people for the first time, we kind of just go around and sort of, do we have common interest? Do we feel like, oh, I like this person, and therefore, actually, I like them, they look good, their face fits, they can start tomorrow, great, I'm going to hire them on the spot. And I see this so many times, time and time again, that people just say, yep, look, the CV looks amazing, their face fits, we had a quick catch up, they look like they love what we do. And yeah, it's done in a few minutes flat, and then it turns out that they're absolute road crash. And that's the wrong way to screen people. The right way is to make sure that we discover that that person has exactly the right talent that we need in order to fill the role that we're looking to fill around that. So a number of processes within this select part of the process. We have screening. So first up, I guess what we're saying is, well, that we want to build out for any interview process a short list of 30 or 40 great people. So we've got that sort of that short list that we're really looking to build out. Recommend when you're doing this as part of the screening work to invite people just to go and do a telephone, leave a message on an answering phone to tell us exactly why they're the right person for the role. What are their goals, what they're great at, what they're not so good at, and just why they believe they're going to be a great candidate for the role. Just ask them to do that for 2 minutes. What it does is totally deselects all the people who can't be bothered to do that, who don't think they'd be a good fit. And then you're left hopefully with 10 or 15 really good candidates around that. And then you can just bring them forward to that sort of first screening interview. And at this stage, we want to be conversational. We want to be intensely curious, not necessarily too formal. We just want to make sure that we've got a reasonable fit, and we can then see folk that we want to take to the next stage, the next level, as it were, around that. And at this stage, the top grading part of the interview, this is when we really want to get deep into detail about the candidate's life story, from their education to their job history. And all we're going to do here for each of the jobs is ask these questions. In that specific job, what were you hired to do? What did you accomplish that you were proud of? What were the mistakes you made in that job? Tell me a bit more about the people you work with, and why did you leave? Were you pushed, or has actually moved on for a career opportunity elsewhere? All we're looking to do here is just get some depth of their employment history, and this will give us some good patterns around why they left, how long they were in each of the roles for, and how they performed in those roles. And then this, again, through this stage, will allow us to refine down, maybe just have the final stage of interviews where we've got the 2 or 3 candidates that we really want to come back for a final interview, that we're able to get into much more detail about the role, the cultural fit around that. And probably at this stage, once we've got somebody that we really like, is we get to the final part of the final step, which is all about sell. How do we get a candidate we absolutely love to leave maybe an existing role and come and say yes to joining this? And here Jeff talks about the 5 F's of selling. Number 1, fit. Does this person feel like they're a great fit for the company? Family. So are the people around you, the rest of the board, the rest of the team in the company, really supportive of making this hire? And I think it's a great idea when you got down to the last 2, maybe to go out and have a meal with them, see in terms of how they perform outside of the work environment, just to make sure that they are a good fit. You need to make sure that you are going to be able to recompense them in the right way and demonstrate that by joining you that they are going to have fortune, that again, how they're going to get paid. this notion of freedom, that joining you will give them the right work-life balance. And also coming to your organization talks about the final F is fun. What is fun about the intrinsics of the job that you are selling the sizzle. Some of those areas all around making sure that as we are looking to attract, recruit great people, A players, we've got what we call the top grading process in place in order to allow us to do this. So, all being well, we have made a great hire, a hire that we're really excited about it. We've sent them the offer letter back. They've accepted the offer letter. They're super happy to start. The next thing we need to really excel at is the onboarding process. And often when I'm working with organizations, this is where they come up short. They put all this energy and effort into hiring great talent and then just leave them to just come on board in a really haphazard and not really well thought out way. So the next area is to ensure that we retain these great people, is to make sure that first impressions count, that we have a really robust onboarding process that is designed to make them thinking, oh my goodness, how lucky am I? I thought this was going to be a great organization to come and work with. And actually my first 2 or 3 weeks have really borne that out. You know, everything that's been, you can imagine that they thought about, and they've really got me settled into the organization around that. Number of different areas that you need to build into your onboarding process. And what we talked about in the previous podcast is this notion of the process accountability chart. And I really, really advocate the benefits of having somebody, just one person in the organization accountable for the onboarding process and making sure this is fit for purpose around that. The statistics bear this up as well, that if you go about setting up new hires for success and drive long-term retention, that they are 69% more likely to stay when they are formally and properly onboarded. So it really makes sense as well that you invest the right amount of time doing this. So 8 tips for creating a successful onboarding process. I think it goes without saying. Number 1, make sure that you provide a warm welcome. That everybody knows that Bob is going to come and join the company today. Bob is just given a massively warm welcome. It's interesting the number of times that you have a leaving do for somebody who's moving on to pastures new, but why not have a starting do and really welcome somebody to do that? Think about it as well, not just Bob, but maybe if his spouse is called Belinda, sending to Belinda some flowers on the day that he joins, just saying how much they're looking forward to welcoming their family into the organization. And then Belinda is bought into it as well. I think it really makes sense as well to introduce a mentor to somebody who is maybe not their line manager, but somebody that they can go to with questions, somebody who's just maybe somebody you actually looking to develop, an A player that you want to stretch and grow, and ask them to mentor a new hire around that, the go-to person around that. Obviously, orientation, making sure that all the sort of areas that they need to know how the business works, all of the tools they need, like laptops and cars if relevant, but all that stuff is done and kind of was all there, good to go on day one. I also really recommend it's the leader of the company, the CEO, who spends time with the new hire, just taking them through the history of the company, taking them through the core values and what they stand for around that, and immerse them in those values. That scorecard that you used for the interview process, what do you sit and take them back through against it? This is going to be your key deliverables. This is a scorecard we're going to judge you against. Also, make sure that they've got clarity on their priorities for the next 90 days, what the KPIs are. So that's all there. And then you've also scheduled in, I think when somebody just started, you know, maybe regular check-ins once a week to start with, ensuring that all is good, answering any questions they have, making sure that they have got all the tools they need around that. After probably about 2 months, 3 months, just ask them, how was the onboarding process? Throughout the time again, where would you improve it? They'll give you the intel to say, well, this is good, but actually, I think this was the area that can be improved on. Great, ask them about that. Unfortunately, we're never going to get all this right all the time. There may be sometimes we haven't got it right, and somebody doesn't fit the culture or doesn't work out. And I think again, learning from those hiring mistakes. What was it? What caused it? Speaking to people who maybe left the company, just to what from their point of view, so that we can build that into our process for the next time as well. Quite a lot of the companies that we work with now, you probably know the notion of having a brand promise, but there's an idea now of having it an employee promise, where someone comes to join you, and the first day you can then say to them, right, this is our welcome to you. These are all of our cultural values and stuff like that. This is our commitment to you, that we will develop you or train you, grow you to become the best person that you can be. So I really advocate the idea of having a culture book, an employee brand promise. Gene Brown from the City Bin Company, I love his employee promise. Goes something like, as well as treating you with courtesy, fairness, and gratitude, we will help you achieve your lifelong educational goals and let you know that you are part of something amazing. And that's Gene's promise to all his employees. And he'll say to them, when he's doing the onboarding bit in the very first part of it, say, if I fall short, or any of us fall short on this, you can call us out. Really powerful way of doing that. And of course, if you want to scale your company by 10x, well, you've got to grow your team by 10x. So I think now that we've done a job, we've got hired a great A player, we've onboarded that great A player. Now we need to get about making sure that we retain them as well. The one thing is, as talented people, there's going to be other organizations that would want to get their hands on them as well. They're going to be ambitious. So if we fall short or let them down, they may well look to go elsewhere. Our role is to make sure we do our level best to grow them, to challenge them, to stretch them, to 10x them, so they can successfully scale the company. And I actually often talk about this almost like a production line of leaders creating more leaders. Leaders creating more leaders. So it's a really powerful way of getting a growth organization where you can really go about unlocking the growth potential in all your team. So one of the companies I worked with in the past is a company called PP Control and Automation. Have created what they call the Bright Sparks University, which is for all of their team members, and it really helps them through the technical training that they require, continuous improvement training, leadership training. So they've got a pipeline of people coming through, which in their terms is their commitment to learning around that. And it makes utter sense. It's Steve Jobs, the late great Steve Jobs, he set up Apple University when he knew he was dying. He really wanted to make sure that having a corporate university where you could go about growing talent makes a lot of sense. And I sense now that if you're able to develop and grow your team using your framework, using all your culture, using your methodologies, using the way you solve problems, the likelihood is those people are going to be around and staying with you forever, or not ever, but for a longer time. And they're going to be the people who share your ethos, share the ways that you grow back your company. A really, really important area. I've got another organization that I work with in the building world. They built out the Hodgkin Academy. They realized that the world shortage of bricklayers is that they could get a competitive advantage by building out apprenticeships, creating an academy which was committed to training and growing people around that. Interesting, Ian's just taking that next level. They are working on a program on TV at the moment called Brickies, which is again showcasing the work they're doing around highlighting future talent. Great way of actually creating an employment brand by doing that. So I think what is clear is that A players, you'll retain them when you look after them well. They're challenged. Great people love to be stretched. They're promoted. So I think as you scale up, you create and carve out career pathways. These people feel involved. A players like to feel involved around that. Also, it's so important that you recognize people, you appreciate them, they're valued, they're empowered, they're trusted. I think these are all areas. And probably the final one in the research is actually, payment. Obviously, you've got to pay the right amount of money, but it's probably one of the things further down, the motivations of why people will stay where they are. So just a few areas of some thoughts now on other areas around retaining your best employees, having an ongoing relationship, and that personal connection. I think most people, myself included, in a past life, leave an organization because of their relationship with their immediate boss. And there's a lot of people out there, bosses who are not great leaders. You might be micromanagers or managers. So you're making sure that across your organization, you've got all your leaders, who are brilliant at looking after their team members. Recognition and acknowledgement is so important. It's probably the number one thing that humans would crave for, is recognition, and making sure that you're doing that consistently. I think having a great working environment is really important nowadays. And we know that since the pandemic, you're having maybe a hybrid version of working, but you're just having that great environment. People love to go and work and collide with one another. I think nowadays, again, pandemic's brought this out, that if you can give people flexibility around their schedule, that's valued around that as well. If they're doing a great job, maybe rather than pay more, give them extra holiday time. Always advocate coaching, just like on a sporting field. If you're going to develop talent for people to fulfill their potential, there you'll have a coaching culture that pervades across the company. And then over time, making sure that you've got highly empowered people, that they have got a framework in which to do well, but they know that they've got that real empowerment and responsibility. Just also make sure that you're always communicating well, and this notion of radical candor, just telling people straight how they're doing, and if they are falling short, and they know critically what they need to do around that. And ask people all the time, how are we doing? Get their input back, and just give them the notion of, we're doing good work, we're doing great work for the world and stuff like that. We're on a mission, and we're feeling growth as well. So just some hacks and ideas there in terms of how to hold on to your top talent. And a few final things just so we reflect on here. One is this notion from Kip Tindell, who ran the Container Store, and this has stuck with me for a while. They only hire great people, and Kip talks about this 1 to 3 principle. One great person is equivalent to 3 good people. Just to repeat that again, one great person is equivalent to 3 good people. So again, if you can find that A player, it's worth paying them a bit more than the industry average, because that they're probably going to do 3 times as much as a B player, and certainly probably 30 times as much as a C player. So that is something I really want you to reflect on. One great person is equivalent of 3 good people. I think Steve Jobs put it really nice as well. A small team of A players can run circles around a giant team of B players and C players. So again, you often hear that we need to chuck more people at a problem. We need, as we're growing quickly, we need more hires. Well, actually, I'd always counter that to say, have we got the right number of A players? Yeah, let's make sure that we have got the C players off the bus, and we're building out B players to hopefully become A potentials and A players in the future. But are we focused on that as well? And also, when it comes to hiring, I think Steve Jobs again has this saying that A players only hire A players. B players probably just better will hire C players, and C players hire D players. And it doesn't take very long to get Z players. So the trickle-down effect causes bozo explosions in most organizations. And again, just to reiterate and highlight how important it is to hire A players. And once you've got A players, make sure that they are in charge of the hiring process as you grow out your organization. As we've gone through this, promised in today's podcast that we would give you some insights around how to go about attracting A players, giving you a tool and a process, top grading, which to recruit top talent, the importance of onboarding in the right way, and then making sure that we are doing a great job of retaining A players. What you'll find now in the show notes are a number of other added resources. Hopefully you benefit from today's podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurs at Scale podcast. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review, it would really help other like-minded entrepreneurs find the podcast and grow our community. Click on the subscribe button to be kept in the loop for all future podcasts, and go to the show notes for additional reading resources and links to our guest. Until next time, thank you so much.